She was hiding in a bathroom stall until the mafia boss kicked open the door and said, "You're safe." The smell was the worst part. Sour beer, old urine, and the metallic tang of my own blood. I pressed my back harder against the graffiti-covered metal, my knees drawn up to my chest. The floor was sticky, cold seeping through the thin fabric of my jeans. I was Lena Carter. I was 26 years old, and I was hiding in the last stall of a dive bar bathroom in Haverdale, praying for an end that didn't involve the man I'd just escaped. My breath hitched in a sob I couldn't afford to let out. My left cheekbone throbbed in rhythm with my pulse, a raw, swollen knot where Troy Del Vecchio's ring had connected. My entire body was a map of his anger. He'd ripped my coat from me back in the alley, my phone shattering against the brick wall moments after. Desperate. Alone. The words circled in my head. I'd whispered for help when he first grabbed me, but the alley was empty, and the bar's music was too loud now. I just mouthed the word, a silent plea to a god I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. A brutal confrontation. That's a polite way of putting it. Troy was an enforcer, a thick-necked animal from the South Haven street crew, and I was just a girl who'd taken a payday loan. A loan to keep my mother's hospital bed from being given to someone else. A loan that had ballooned into an impossible figure. And now, they didn't just want money. They wanted leverage. They wanted me. The main bathroom door creaked open. My heart stopped. I clamped my hand over my mouth, tasting the grit on my palm. Boots on the tiled floor, heavy, but not Troy's clumsy, dragging steps. These were measured, slow, the sound of expensive leather. A man was checking the stalls. The first door banged open, an empty scrape of metal. The second, same thing. A pause. He was outside my stall. I could see the polished black tips of his shoes beneath the gap. He didn't knock. He didn't jiggle the lock. There was a second of absolute stillness, and then the door exploded inward. The cheap lock ripped from the frame like paper. The metal door slammed against the partition, rattling the entire row. I screamed, scrambling backward, but there was nowhere to go. A man stood in the ruined doorway. He was tall, older than me, maybe late 30s. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than my apartment, a dark gray shirt beneath it, no tie. His face was all harsh angles, dark stubble shadowing a strong jaw, but it was his eyes that held me. They were dark, assessing, and utterly devoid of emotion. He wasn't the police. He wasn't a savior. He was something else. He looked at me, huddled on the floor, at my split lip and swelling eye. His gaze was so intense it felt like a physical touch. Then he spoke, his voice a low rumble that cut through the bar's distant music. "You're safe." I stared at him, my mind unable to process the words. Safe? The word was a lie, a cruel joke. I was shaking my head, tears blurring his imposing figure, when the main door crashed open again. "There you are, you little—" Troy Del Vecchio filled the doorway. His face was red, his eyes wild with rage. He saw the man in the suit and sneered, his confidence returning. "Who the hell are you? This ain't your business. The girl's with me." I flinched, trying to make myself smaller. This was it. This new man would step aside, and Troy would finish what he started. The man in the suit didn't even turn around. He spoke to me, his eyes still locked on mine. "Stay there." Then he moved. It wasn't a bar fight. It was an execution. Troy lunged, his big fist swinging. The man in the suit moved inside the punch, a blur of black. His left hand caught Troy's wrist. His right hand drove, palm heel, straight into Troy's nose. The sound was wet, a sickening crunch of bone and cartilage. Troy howled, stumbling back, clutching his face as dark blood poured between his fingers. He was big, but he was a bully. The man in the suit was a predator. "She's in my territory," the man said, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "You are trespassing." He grabbed Troy by the collar and the belt, half lifting the bigger man off his feet, and threw him bodily out of the bathroom. Troy crashed into the hallway wall and collapsed, moaning. The man in the suit turned back to me. The violence was gone. his expression as blank as before. He held out a hand. "Get up." I didn't take it. I used the partition to pull myself to my feet, my legs shaking so badly I almost fell. "My name is Nico Romano," he said. He looked down at his hand, then let it drop to his side. "I own this building. That man was in my territory without permission. You are coming with me." It wasn't a question. He put a hand on my lower back, firm but not rough, and guided me out of the stall. His men, 2 other men in dark suits, were in the hallway. They didn't look at me, their eyes on the groaning heap that was Troy. "Clean that up," Nico Romano said to them. He didn't release me. He steered me through the back corridor, through a steel door, and into the freezing night air. A black sedan was idling at the curb. He opened the back door and gently, but irresistibly, pushed me inside. The car smelled like leather and cold air. He slid in beside me, and the car pulled away from the curb before his door was even fully shut. I stared out the window, watching the neon signs of Haverdale blur past. I was numb, my body vibrating with adrenaline and pain. "Where are you taking me?" I whispered. My voice was hoarse. "My house, it's nearby." "I want to go home." "No." He wasn't looking at me. He was looking straight ahead, his profile like something carved from stone. "You stay tonight. My men will find out who you are, and why Troy Del Vecchio thinks he has the right to hunt in my territory." Terror, cold and sharp, pierced the numbness. He wasn't saving me. He was collecting me. I was a piece of property that had been damaged on his land. His townhouse was on a dark, tree-lined street, a fortress of brick and black-painted iron. He led me inside. The interior was minimalist, all clean lines, dark wood and glass. It was beautiful, but it was cold. There was no life here. No pictures, no clutter, just expensive, empty space. He took me to a guest room on the 2nd floor. It was larger than my entire apartment. The bed was massive, covered in a simple gray duvet. "The bathroom is through that door. There are clothes in the closet. Don't leave this room." He turned to go. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked, the words tearing from my throat. He paused in the doorway, the light from the hall silhouetting him. "Because I don't like trespassers." He closed the door, and I heard the quiet, definitive click of a lock. I didn't move for a long time. I just stood in the center of the vast, silent room, listening to the pounding of my own blood. I was too raw, too emotionally exhausted to even cry. I was a prisoner, traded from one cage to another. I refused to talk. I refused to shower. I just crawled onto the bed, still in my dirty, blood-stained clothes, and curled into a tight ball. Sleep was not an escape. It was a dark, churning ocean of fear. Troy's face, his beefy hands, the sound of my phone cracking, the alley, the cold, the feeling of his ring against my skin. I was running, but my legs were lead. He was laughing. I woke up screaming. I was sitting bolt upright, clawing at the sheets, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. The door flew open. Nico Romano stood there, his suit jacket gone, his gray shirt rumpled. He hadn't been sleeping. "You're here," he said. He crossed the room in 2 strides, not turning on the light. "You're not there." "He had me," I gasped, clutching my throat. I couldn't breathe. He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't touch me. He just sat there, a solid, immovable presence in the dark. It was a nightmare. "You're in my house. You're safe." That word again. "I'm not safe," I sobbed, the tears finally coming, hot and acidic. "I'm never going to be safe. You don't understand." "Then make me understand," he said. His voice was different, softer, not gentle. Exactly. This man didn't seem capable of true gentleness, but the hard edges were filed down. "And the dam broke." I told him everything. I told him about my mom, the first diagnosis, the second, the hospital bills that piled up like snowdrifts, suffocating us. I told him about the payday loan, just a few $1,000s to cover the copays for her medication. I told him about the interest rate, a number so high it sounded fictional. I told him how I'd missed one payment, just one, and how they'd sold the debt to someone else, to the South Haven street crew. "They don't just want the money anymore," I whispered, staring at my twisted hands. "It's too much. I can't pay it. Troy, he said I could work it off. He said they could use a girl like me, leverage, to make other people pay." I choked on the last word. The shame was suffocating. Nico was silent for a long time. I could feel his eyes on me in the dark. I risked a glance at him. His face was granite, but a muscle was jumping in his jaw, a rapid, violent pulse. His hands were fisted on his knees. "He will not touch you again," he said, his voice a low, cold vow. "No one from South Haven will ever touch you again." "You say that," I whispered bitterly. "What do you want from me? Everyone wants something. What's your price?" He stood up. "I'm not asking for anything in return. Go to sleep, Lena." He knew my name. I hadn't told him. My blood ran cold. Of course. His men. While I was cowering in this room, they had been digging into my life. He walked to the door and paused. "My men confirmed your story. The hospital, the debt, all of it." He looked back at me, and his expression was something I couldn't read. It was more than just the protective anger of a predator whose territory had been crossed. It was curious, intense. "Get some rest." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I didn't hear a lock this time. I sat there, shaking from the nightmare and the confession. I was still filthy. The grime of the bar, the memory of Troy's hands, it was still on me. I crept into the attached bathroom. It was bigger than my kitchen, all marble and glass. I turned on the shower, the water steaming hot, and scrubbed my skin until it was raw. I washed the blood from my hair, watching it circle the drain. I wanted to wash away the last 6 months. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel so thick it felt like a blanket, I saw the clothes he'd mentioned. They were folded on the marble vanity. A pair of soft gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt. They were men's clothes. His clothes. I pulled them on. The sweatpants were impossibly long, the waist huge, but I tightened the drawstring until they stayed up. The t-shirt swallowed me. It fell to my mid-thigh, the sleeves hanging past my elbows. It smelled clean, like expensive soap, and something uniquely him, a faint, warm scent of spice and tobacco. I felt small, safer than I had in months, but also more trapped than ever. I opened the bathroom door, and he was in the hallway, leaning against the opposite wall, his arms crossed over his chest. He'd been waiting. His eyes moved over me, slowly, taking in my damp hair, my scrubbed clean face. His gaze lingered where the wide collar of his shirt had slipped off my shoulder, exposing my collarbone and the faint yellowing bruise from an earlier encounter with Troy. His jaw clenched. A muscle jumped. For a second, I thought he would say something. His expression was tight, his eyes burning with an intensity that made my stomach flip. Then he just pushed off the wall and walked away down the hall, disappearing into the shadows without a single word. I went back to the guest bed. The sheets were crisp and cool. The house was silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a place built for secrets, a place where a man like Nico Romano lived. I was alone. I thought I was alone. I turned onto my side, facing the empty room, and the tears came again. Not the hysterical sobs from the nightmare, but a quiet, hopeless weeping. I cried for my mother. I cried for the life I'd lost. I cried because I had escaped one monster, only to find myself in the velvet-lined cage of another. I didn't know that down the hall, in a room filled with screens. Nico Romano was watching me. I didn't know he was watching the hallway security camera feed, his eyes fixed on the tiny, grainy image of me crying silently into a pillow. I didn't know he was sitting in the dark, his hands fisted, a cold, lethal fury building in his chest for the people who had dared to hurt what was now, whether I knew it or not. I woke up to a silence that was too heavy. It felt pressed down, artificial. My bones ached, and the bruises on my face and ribs had settled into a dull, purple throb. I was still in Nico's clothes, the soft cotton a strange comfort against my skin. For a moment, I was just a girl in a soft bed. Then I remembered the lock clicking shut, the scream in the night, the man in the hallway. I pushed myself up, my muscles protesting. The guest room door was unlocked. I padded barefoot into the upper hallway. It was empty. A long stretch of polished dark wood, sunlight, thin and pale, streamed in from a high window at the end. Downstairs, the house was just as quiet, but it was occupied. A man in a dark suit stood near the front door, his arms folded. He didn't look at me, but I saw his eyes track my reflection in the glass panel beside him. Another man, younger, with dark, curly hair, was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter and reading a newspaper. He looked up when I entered. "Morning, ma'am. Coffee's fresh." "Ma'am." I wasn't ma'am. I was Lena, the girl from the bar, the girl with the payday loan. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice rough. "The boss is in his study," the young man said, folding his paper. "He said to make sure you ate." He gestured to the counter, where a plate of pastries sat beside a high-end espresso machine. I ignored it. The feeling of being watched, of being managed, made my skin crawl. This wasn't safety. It was a gilded cage. I looked past him, through the kitchen to a glass door that seemed to lead to a small, walled-in garden. I needed air. I needed to know if I was a guest or a prisoner. I walked toward the door. "I wouldn't, Miss Carter," the young man said, his voice polite but firm. I ignored him. My hand closed on the cold metal handle. I pulled it open and stepped out into the sharp October air. The garden was all sharp angles. Stone and dormant rose bushes. A high brick wall surrounded it. I took one breath, two, and then I bolted. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran, my bare feet stinging on the cold patio stones. I ran for the back wall, for a wooden gate I saw tucked in the corner. I was desperate, fueled by a claustrophobic panic. I made it maybe 10 feet. A hand closed around my upper arm. It wasn't Troy's brutal grip. It was strong, impersonal, and absolute. The man from the front door was there, his expression bored. He didn't yank me. He just stopped my momentum and began steering me back toward the house. "The boss wants you inside," he said flatly. He walked me back into the kitchen, where the younger man, Sal, held the door open, an apologetic look on his face. They escorted me to the grand foyer. Nico was standing at the bottom of the main staircase, his arms crossed over his chest. He was dressed in another perfect suit, this one charcoal gray. He looked like he hadn't slept, but it only made him look more imposing, his eyes darker, his jaw set. "What the hell did you think you were doing?" His voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, cold command that echoed in the marble entryway. It hit me like a physical blow, vibrating with an authority I had never heard. "Did you think they would just let you walk away after what I did to Del Vecchio? Do you have any idea what you are?" I flinched. It was a small, pathetic movement. My hand flew up to my cheek, the one that still bore the imprint of Troy's ring. My shoulder hunched, my whole body bracing for an impact that didn't come. I squeezed my eyes shut. The silence that followed was deafening. When I dared to open them, the anger on his face was gone. It had been replaced by something stunned, something that looked almost like self-loathing. He scrubbed a hand over his face, breaking his rigid posture. "Damn it," he breathed. He took a step back, as if I'd burned him. "I apologize." The words sounded rough, unnatural on his tongue. "Lena, I did not mean to raise my voice." "I don't want this," I whispered, the words trembling. Tears of frustration burned my eyes. "I appreciate what you did for me at the bar. I do, but I just escaped from one dangerous man. I don't want to be protected by another one." He stepped closer, his intensity returning, but the coldness was gone. It was replaced by a heat that was almost more intimidating. He stopped just a foot from me, forcing me to tilt my head back to look at him. "Look at me," he commanded, but his voice was low. I forced my eyes to meet his. They were dark, complex, and they saw everything. "I'm not your danger, sweetheart." He left me standing there, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sal, the younger guard, cleared his throat. "Seriously, Miss Carter," he said gently, "have some coffee? You look like you need it." That day, I overheard the truth. I was wandering the house, a ghost in Nico's borrowed clothes, too restless to sit still. The door to his study was open, just a crack. I heard his voice, tight with frustration, and another, older voice. "Going is a problem, Nico. Harboring her is a direct provocation. South Haven is one thing. They're animals. But they are backed by the Barletta Syndicate. You break Troy Del Vecchio's nose. You are spitting in Riccardo Falzoni's eye. Is this girl worth a turf war?" Riccardo Falzoni. The name meant nothing to me, but the way the man said it made my blood cold. Nico's reply was flat and final. "She's in my house. She's under my protection. That is the end of the discussion, Marco." A turf war, because of me. I shrank away from the door, my stomach churning. The days began to blur. I wasn't a prisoner. I was an obligation, a very closely watched one. My guards, Sal and the quiet one, Angelo, were polite. They brought me food. They didn't speak unless I spoke first. Nico and I fell into a strange, silent routine. We ate breakfast together at the massive dining table. He would read a physical newspaper, the pages rustling, while I stared into my coffee, too intimidated to eat. In the evenings, we would sometimes end up in the same room, the main living room with its cold fireplace and leather furniture. One night, I found him there, staring into the black, empty hearth, a glass of what looked like water in his hand. "Why?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet. He turned his head. His gaze was heavy. "Why what? Why do this? Why risk a turf war? For me?" He took a sip from his glass before answering, "There are rules, Lena. Even in my world, my father had rules. You do not deal in drugs, ever. It poisons the community. It poisons the business." He stared back at the fireplace. "And you do not harm women. You do not harm children. Del Vecchio broke that rule on my property. He paid a small price for it." "A small price? You threw him through a doorway," I whispered. "That was a small price," he said, his voice dropping, a lethal edge creeping in. "He's lucky I didn't kill him." I shivered. He was a monster, but he was a monster with a moral code, a code that, for now, protected me. The tension in the house was a living thing. It was in the silence between us at breakfast. It was in the way his eyes would follow me when I crossed a room, a quiet, possessive intensity that made my skin prickle. I felt it, a strange, terrifying pull, a mix of fear and something else, something I wasn't ready to name. The house had a gym in the basement. I'd found it on my third day, and I used the treadmill, running until my legs burned, trying to outrun the fear and the confusion. One evening, I went down, needing to move, and heard a sound, a rhythmic, forceful thwack, thwack, thwack that echoed off the concrete walls. I padded down the hall and stopped in the doorway, hidden in the shadows. He was alone, in the center of the room, working a heavy bag. He was shirtless. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I just watched. He was all corded muscle and damp skin, glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. His back and shoulders were powerful, muscles contracting and releasing with every brutal impact. A large, intricate tattoo of a crest or a dragon snaked over his left shoulder and across his chest. He moved with a practiced, lethal grace, and this wasn't exercise. This was training. He was a weapon, honing himself. Thwack! 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 Silence. He didn't turn around. His breathing was heavy, ragged, filling the room. "You gonna stand there all night?" My heart leaped. I stepped into the light, my hands twisting in the sleeves of his t-shirt, which I was still wearing. He grabbed a small towel from a bench, wiping his face, but he didn't turn from the bag. I was just going to use the treadmill," I stammered. He finally turned. His chest was beaded with sweat. My eyes were drawn to it, not just to the muscles or the dark ink, but to the marks, scars, A thin, white line puckered his skin just above his ribs on the right side. Another, more jagged, disappeared under the waistband of his gray sweatpants. "What are those?" I whispered. I moved closer without thinking, drawn by a curiosity that overpowered my fear. He looked down at the mark on his ribs. "Business," he said, his voice rough. Did it hurt?" He gave a short, harsh laugh. "What do you think?" I was standing right in front of him now. The heat rolled off his skin. He smelled of soap and salt and exertion. I don't know why I did it. My mind was screaming at me to go, to run, but my body wouldn't listen. My fingers lifted, trembling. I needed to know if he was real, if the scars that marked him were as real as the bruises that marked me. I reached out and lightly traced the white line on his side. His entire body went rigid. His hand shot out, snatching my wrist. His grip was steel. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't move. I was trapped. I gasped, my eyes flying to his.
He was breathing, but not from the workout anymore. The air between us was electric, crackling. His dark eyes bored into mine, and I saw a raw, uncontrolled hunger there that terrified and fascinated me. His gaze dropped to my mouth, lingered, then moved back to my eyes. I could feel the pulse in his throat hammering against his skin.
My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break. He was going to kiss me, and I wasn't going to stop him. With a growl that seemed to come from his chest, he released me. He shoved my hand away and stepped back, turning his back to me. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "Get out, Lena," he said, his voice ragged. I didn't need to be told twice. I fled the gym, my skin on fire where he'd touched me. I couldn't sleep that night. The encounter in the gym had shaken me to my core. The man was a contradiction. A violent animal with a gentle touch, a cold commander who apologized for raising his voice. I wandered the dark, silent house. Through a set of glass doors in the living room, I saw him. He was standing on a wide balcony, staring out at the dark, empty street. He was just in his shirt and trousers. The night air was sharp, biting. It had to be only 50 degrees, but he didn't seem to feel it. I slid the door open. He didn't turn. "You'll get sick," I said softly, hovering in the doorway. "I don't get sick." I shivered, rubbing my arms. His suit jacket was draped over the back of a patio chair. Acting on impulse, I picked it up. It was heavy, made of fine wool and lined with silk. I slipped it on. It swallowed me, the sleeves hanging past my hands, the hem falling to my knees. It smelled of him, that scent of spice and clean soap. I walked to the railing, standing a few feet away. The city lights were a dull glow on the horizon. He turned his head, watching me pull the lapels closer. A strange, small smile touched his lips, gone as quickly as it came. "You look safer in my world than out there," he whispered, his voice a low rasp that seemed to travel right down my spine. He moved closer, the heat coming off his body warred with the cold night air. He raised a hand, his fingers gently brushing my still bruised cheek. His touch was so light, a shocking, tender contrast to the man who'd grabbed my wrist hours earlier. "He hurt you," he stated. It wasn't a question. "He won't again." He leaned in. I tilted my head up, my breath catching. His eyes were focused on my lips. My heart stopped. This was it. Crack! The sound was sharp, definitive, a gunshot. It wasn't a backfire. Not a firecracker, it was a high-velocity rifle shot that shattered the night's quiet. In one fluid, violent motion, Nico grabbed me by the waist, spinning me around and shoving me back through the open door, shielding me with his own body. "Get down," he roared, the commander's voice back. I fell to the carpet as Sal and Angelo burst into the room, their guns drawn, their faces hard. "Boss, front gate," Sal shouted. "Lock it down, full lockdown," Nico commanded, his voice pure iron. He pulled me to my feet, his hand like a vice on my arm. "Get the gate feed up, now!" He dragged me with him to his study. The room I'd peeked into was now a command center. Marco, the older man, was already there, his face grim, staring at a bank of monitors. One screen showed the front gate, illuminated by floodlights. My stomach lurched. Nailed to the heavy iron bars, stark and grotesque, was a dead bird, a black crow, its wings spread. "Barletta," Marco said, his voice flat. "It's a signature, a warning." I watched Nico, the man who had almost kissed me, the man who had touched my face with such tenderness, was gone. In his place was a ruthless general. His face was cold, his eyes assessing the threat with a chilling detachment. He started giving orders, his voice rapid fire. "Double the perimeter, now. Call Enzo. I want eyes on every South Haven rat hole within the hour. Find out who drove that car. I want them." He was a different person, a man who gave orders that led to violence, a man who spoke of wars and syndicates. And I had brought this to his door. The bullet hadn't been for him, it had been for me. The men dispersed, Sal and Angelo to their posts, Marco to make the calls. Nico and I were left alone in the office. The only sound, the quiet hum of the electronics, the only light, the blue-white glow of the monitors showing the dead bird at his gate. He stood facing the screens, but I knew he wasn't seeing them. His shoulders were rigid. He slammed his fist onto the expensive mahogany desk. The monitors jumped. "Damn him!" he snarled. "Not at me, at the world." He swept a stack of papers onto the floor, the rage radiating from him in palpable waves. He was losing control. This man, who was always in control, was cracking. He leaned his hands on the desk, his head hung down. His back muscles knotted with a tension that looked painful. He wasn't just angry. He was afraid. Not for himself. For me. I moved before I could think. My fear was gone, replaced by a sudden, overwhelming need to what? To comfort him? The man who was the most dangerous thing I'd ever known? I walked up behind him. He stiffened as I got close, but I didn't stop. I went around the desk, standing directly in front of him. He was still staring at the desk. His jaw clenched so hard I was surprised his teeth didn't crack. Nico. He wouldn't look at me. I slid my hands up his arms, which were trembling with contained violence. I put my palms on his stubbled cheeks, cupping his face. The skin was rough. I forced him to look at me. His eyes were wild, dark, and full of a storm I couldn't comprehend. "Let me stay," I whispered, my own voice shaking. "I know this is my fault. I know I brought this here, but please, let me stay, even if it's just tonight." His breath hitched. He looked at me as if he was drowning and I was his last breath of air. One of his arms snaked around my waist, yanking me against his hard body, his other hand tangled in my hair, tilting my head back. "Lena," he breathed, his voice broken. And then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It wasn't the slow, tentative exploration from the balcony. It was a desperate, claiming, bruising kiss. It was raw, full of the night's terror and the weeks of simmering tension. It was his anger, his fear, and a desperate, burning need all poured into one. His lips were firm, demanding, and I didn't just kiss him back. I clung to him. I opened my mouth to him, my fingers digging into the tight muscles of his shoulders, his jacket still hanging off me like a shield. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against mine. We were both breathing hard, gasping for air. "They will try to hurt you to get to me," he rasped, his eyes closed. "I'm not scared, I lied. Or maybe in that moment, I wasn't." He looked at me then, his eyes searching mine. Then he bent, sliding one arm under my legs, and picked me up. He scooped me into his arms as if I weighed nothing. I instinctively wrapped my legs around his waist, my arms locking around his neck. He carried me out of the office, up the grand staircase, past my guest room, and into his. His bedroom was as sparse as the rest of the house, dominated by a massive bed with a dark wooden frame. It smelled like him. He set me down gently on the edge of the mattress. He didn't rip my clothes off. His hands were shaking. He knelt in front of me, his eyes locked on mine. He slowly pulled his t-shirt, my t-shirt for the last 2 days, over my head. His gaze traced my collarbones, the faint yellowing of the bruises on my skin. He leaned in and pressed a soft, reverent kiss to my shoulder, just above the mark. My breath shuddered out of me. I reached out, my fingers tangling in his dark, thick hair. He unfastened the sweatpants and eased them down my legs, his knuckles grazing my skin, leaving a trail of fire. Then he stood, and I helped him pull his own shirt over his head. I unfastened his trousers. We stood before each other, all pretense stripped away. He was scarred muscle and warm skin. I was bruises and fear and a strange, budding strength. It was slow, it was raw, it was emotional. When he finally moved over me, laying me back on the cool sheets, he braced himself on his arms, looking down at me. I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not the boss, not the killer, just Nico. And he looked vulnerable, lost. He held me, his movements deep and sure, our bodies moving together in a rhythm that was both new and ancient. It was a promise, a seal. Every touch, every whispered breath, every time his eyes met mine in the dim light, it was a statement: you are mine, I am yours. It was two broken, lonely people finding something whole in the dark, while a war waited for us outside the gates. We weren't just seeking release. We were finding something we never knew we were missing. We were finding shelter in each other. I woke to the smell of coffee and his skin. My first breath was an inhale of him, the scent of spice and soap and warm male skin that had imprinted itself on me in the dark. I was tangled in his sheets, in his bed. One of his heavy arms was draped over my waist, his body a solid, warm wall pressed against my back. For a single, suspended moment, I was just a woman waking up next to a man. I wasn't Lena Carter, the girl with the death sentence debt. I wasn't the girl who had hidden in a bathroom stall. I felt safe, truly safe. Then the night came rushing back, the gunshot, the dead bird, the raw, desperate passion that had followed. I was lying in the bed of a man who commanded an army, a man who had wars, a man who had just declared one by taking me into his bed. I slipped out from under his arm. He stirred, a low groan in his chest, but didn't wake. I stood in the dim morning light of his room, the gray t-shirt he'd given me falling to my thighs, and just looked at him. In sleep, his face was unguarded. The harsh lines were softened, the granite jaw relaxed. The dark stubble on his cheeks and chin made him look rougher, more human. His thick, dark hair was a mess on the pillow. I felt a pull in my chest, a painful, terrifying tenderness for this man, this killer. I padded out of the room, my bare feet silent on the cold wood floor. The house was quiet, but it was the quiet of a base on high alert. I saw Angelo at the top of the stairs, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. He nodded at me, his eyes blank. I needed coffee. I needed to clear my head. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, I heard his voice from the study. The door was ajar. He must have woken and dressed the second I left. "A message," Nico was saying, his voice low and cold, the commander back in place. "I don't want a war with Falzoni. Not yet. But he put a hand on my gate. He needs to lose that hand. I want the two men who drove that car. I want the warehouse they report to. Burn it, and I want them to know why." There was a pause. He was listening to someone on the phone. I don't care about the product. Burn it all," he ordered. "Make it clean. A message hit. I want Riccardo Falzoni to know that what's mine is mine." I must have made a sound, a small gasp, because the talking stopped. A second later, he was in the doorway, his phone in his hand. He was dressed in black trousers and a fresh gray shirt. His sleeves rolled up his powerful forearms. His hair was damp, slicked back from a shower. He looked at me, his eyes unreadable. "Lena?" "A message hit," I whispered, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. My stomach twisted. This was the man who had kissed the bruise on my shoulder, who had held me like I was something precious. You're going to kill them. The men who left the bird." He didn't deny it. He ended the call, slipping the phone into his pocket, and watched me with that same unnerving stillness. You told me your rules, I said, my voice shaking, my hands balling into fists at my sides. You said you don't harm women or kids. You said you don't do drugs. I don't, he replied. But blood? Blood is okay. You don't do drugs, Nico. But what about blood? He walked toward me, not stopping until he was so close I had to crane my neck to look at him. His shadow fell over me, and the tenderness from the night was gone, replaced by the cold reality of the boss. He reached out, his finger gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was a spark on my cold skin. Blood is already on the table, Lena, he said, his voice quiet, almost kind, which made it 1,000 times more terrifying. It was on the table the second Troy Del Vecchio put his hands on you. It was on the table when Falzone's sniper put a bullet in my gate. You just didn't see it yet. I recoiled. So that's it? An eye for an eye? A dead bird for 2 dead men in a burning building? That is how I keep you safe, he stated, as if it were the simplest fact in the world. That is how I keep my world from collapsing. They draw blood. I draw more. They learn to stay away. I felt sick. I backed away, shaking my head. I can't. This world. I'm grateful. God, Nico. I'm so grateful you saved me from Troy. And last night, I trailed off, the heat rising in my cheeks. But this is just another kind of monster. His face hardened, the shutters coming down. I am what I am. Before he could say more, Marco, his consigliere, strode into the foyer, his face grim. He shot me a quick, assessing glance before focusing on Nico. Boss, we have a problem, a bigger one. What? Nico's attention snapped to him. All business. Marco hesitated, looking at me. It's about her. She stays. Nico said, What is it? Marco sighed, running a hand through his silvering hair. My source inside Barletta's crew just confirmed it. Riccardo Falzone knows who she is. He knows she's here. He thinks she's a witness, that she's seen too much. He's put a price on her head, Nico. $100,000, dead or alive, but he'd prefer dead. My blood turned to ice, a price, on my head. I felt my knees weaken, and I gripped the railing of the staircase to stay upright. $100,000. To the men in this world, I was nothing but a payday. Nico's reaction was terrifying. He didn't move, he didn't yell, he just went still. A stillness so absolute it was more violent than any explosion, a lethal vacuum. Get the car, he said to Marco, his voice lethally soft. Where are we going? Marco asked. Not we, me. I'm taking her away. Now. Nico, that's not smart, Marco argued. You're a target. You move her. You make her a target, too. She is already a target, Nico snarled. He put a price on her. He signed his own death warrant. Get the car. I'm taking her to the safe house, the one up north. He turned to me, his face a mask of command. Go upstairs. Get your things. I don't have any things, I whispered, numb. I just have your clothes. Then get them, he ordered. You're leaving. Now. Leaving? The word hit me. He wasn't saying we are leaving. He was saying you are leaving. He was sending me away. You're getting rid of me, I said, the realization dawning, cold and bitter. His eyes flashed with impatience. I'm protecting you. Lena, you can't stay here. It's not safe. I have a place, out of state. It's secure. No one will find you there. I'll send my best men with you. No, the word was out of my mouth before I could think. He frowned. This is not a negotiation. You will go. I will keep you safe. Safe? I repeated, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. You mean hidden? You mean locked away? Like a problem you need to manage? I mean alive, he thundered, his control finally snapping. No, I shouted back, my own fear and hurt erupting into rage. That's what everyone does. Troy wanted to use me. The payday lenders wanted to use me. Now you sleep with me. You make me feel... And now I'm a complication. So you're going to ship me off to a safe house so you can go back to your message hits and your bloody business. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. He grabbed my arm. You are going. Let go of me. I ripped my arm from his grasp. You are just like them. You think you own me. You think because you saved me, because of last night, that I'm just another one of your possessions. Lena, that is not... I am not going. I was crying now, hot tears of anger and betrayal. I am not going to be your secret. I am not going to be hidden away while you kill people in my name. I'm leaving. But I'm leaving on my own. You walk out that door, you're dead in an hour, he said, his voice flat. Then I'm dead in an hour, I screamed. I turned and ran up the stairs. I ignored his shout. Lena, get back here. I flew into his room, where I'd woken up. The clothes I'd worn from the bar, my own jeans and thin sweater, were cleaned and folded on a chair. I ripped off his t-shirt, my skin crawling, and pulled on my own clothes. They felt thin, fragile. I grabbed the only other thing that was mine, my worn-out sneakers. I didn't have a phone, a coat, or a single dollar to my name. I didn't care. I stormed back down the stairs. Nico was standing at the bottom, his face a thundercloud. Marco was by the door, looking horrified. Sal was there, too. Lena, stop. Don't be a fool, Nico said, taking a step toward me. Don't touch me, I seethed. I pushed past him, heading for the front door. Sal, stop her, Nico commanded. Sal moved to block the door, his expression pained. Miss Carter, please. The boss is right. It's not safe. Get out of my way, I said, and I shoved him. And he was so surprised. He stumbled back. I grabbed the heavy iron handle of the front door, ripped it open, and ran out into the bright, cold morning. Lena! Nico's roar was primal. I heard his footsteps pounding on the stone walkway behind me. I hit the sidewalk, my sneakers slapping the concrete. I didn't even know which way to run. I just ran. I was free. I was terrified. A black sedan, a different one, screeched around the corner. It slammed to a stop directly in front of me, cutting me off. I skidded to a halt, my heart leaping into my throat. This wasn't Nico's car. 2 doors flew open. 2 men in dark suits, not Nico's men, lunged out. Nico! I screamed, turning back, but he was too far away. A heavy hand clamped over my mouth, stifling my scream. An arm like a steel band wrapped around my waist, lifting me off my feet. I kicked and fought, my nails raking at the man's arm. Get her in! Go! One of them shouted. A black bag, rough and smelling of canvas and oil, was shoved over my head. My world went dark. I was thrown into the back of a car, the door slamming shut, the engine roared, and the tires screamed as the car sped away. I heard Nico shouting my name, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, fading into the distance. Then there was only the sound of the engine and my own muffled sobs. It felt like hours. I was tossed around the back seat, my hands tied painfully behind my back with a zip tie. The bag over my head was suffocating. Finally, the car stopped. I was dragged out, stumbling, and marched over uneven ground. A door scraped open. I was hit by a wave of cold air and a smell so foul it made me gag. It was the smell of old blood, rust, and chemicals. I was shoved into a chair. It was metal and cold. I heard them moving around me, their voices low. Falzone was right, walked right out the front door. Romano's getting sloppy. Shut up, get the boss on the line. Tell him we have the package. Someone ripped the bag off my head. I was in a large, tiled room. It was filthy. Rusted metal hooks hung from the ceiling. A large, stained wooden block stood in the center. An abandoned butcher shop. My stomach heaved. 3 men. They weren't like Nico's. His men were soldiers. These men were rats. They had cruel, empty faces. One of them, clearly the leader, crouched in front of me. He had a gold tooth that glinted in the single, bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. So, you're the little bird who's got Nico Romano starting fires. I just stared, my body trembling so hard the chair rattled. The boss, Mr. Falzone. He wants to know what you told Romano. What's he planning? Who are his contacts? What did you overhear in his bedroom? He grinned. a slimy, suggestive expression that made my skin crawl. I clamped my mouth shut. I thought of Nico. "I am not your danger, sweetheart." "Not gonna talk?" The man sighed. He stood up and pulled a long, thin knife from his belt. He tested the edge on his thumb. "Shame. I was hoping you'd be easy. This is gonna be loud." I squeezed my eyes shut. My entire life narrowing to this single, terrible moment. I had been so stupid, so arrogant. I had run from the one man who could protect me, right into the arms of the men who wanted me dead. The door to the butcher shop didn't just open, it exploded. It burst off its hinges, a solid slab of wood and metal flying into the room, crashing into one of the men and sending him to the floor. Before the dust had even settled, they were inside. It was Nico, and he wasn't alone. Sal and Angelo were with him, moving like shadows, a blur of black suits and controlled, efficient violence. Gunshots. 3, maybe 4. They weren't the wild cracks of a street fight. They were precise, double-tapped sounds. Pop, 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 clinical. The man with the gold tooth turned, his knife forgotten, his eyes wide with shock. Nico was on him in a stride. It wasn't a fight, it was a dismantling. Nico's hands were a blur. He broke the man's wrist, I heard the snap, and drove his other hand into the man's throat. The man collapsed, gagging. The third man, the one by the door, raised his gun. Sal was already there. He didn't shoot. He disarmed the man with a series of brutal, short-range strikes, ending with an elbow to the face that dropped him like a stone. It was over in 10 seconds. The room was silent, filled with the smell of gunpowder and the sound of men groaning. Nico stood in the center of the room, his chest heaving. His face was a mask of cold fury, his eyes black holes. He hadn't just come to rescue me. He had come to execute. He saw the men on the floor, still breathing, and his hand went to the gun at his back. "Nico, no!" I screamed. His eyes snapped to me. The killer's gaze vanished, and the man from the bedroom was back. He saw me, tied to the chair, trembling, my face stained with tears. "Lena?" he breathed. He crossed the room, kicking the knife away from the fallen man. He knelt in front of me, his hands going to the zip ties. His hands, the same hands that had just disabled 3 armed men, were gentle. He pulled a small blade from his pocket and carefully, so carefully, sliced the plastic tie, making sure not to touch my skin. My hands were free. I immediately launched myself at him, my arms wrapping around his neck, burying my face in his shoulder. I sobbed, my body shaking apart with relief and terror. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. His arms came around me, crushing me to him. He held the back of my head, his fingers sinking into my hair. "You're okay, I've got you." He didn't let me walk. He pulled me up, sweeping me into his arms, and carried me out of that place of death. He didn't look back at the men. He just walked out, Sal and Angelo flanking us. As he carried me to his car, I burrowed my face into his neck. He was real. He was warm. He was here. "I told you," he whispered, his lips brushing my temple. "You're safe. I'll kill every man who says otherwise." The drive back was a silent, high-speed blur. I didn't let go of his hand the entire time. When we got back to the townhouse, he carried me inside, past a pale-faced Marco, and up the stairs. The second he set me down in his bathroom, the adrenaline fled, and the horror crashed over me. The smell of the butcher shop was still on me. The feel of the ropes, the sight of the knife, the sound of the gunshots. "I can't," I stammered, backing away from him. "I can't get it off me." I started to shake, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. The blood, Nico, the sound, you... I couldn't say it. "You killed for me. You almost killed for me." "Stop it," I begged, collapsing against the wall. "Please, just stop the bloodshed. I can't live like this. I can't." I stumbled into the glass-walled shower and turned the handle, cranking it as hot as it would go. I didn't wait for it to warm up. I just stood under the icy spray, still in my clothes, scrubbing at my skin. I sank to the tile floor, my back against the wall, and just wept. I was broken. The shower door slid open. Nico stood there, and he was still in his suit, his hair a mess, his face streaked with dirt from the fight. He looked at me, my clothes plastered to my skin, sobbing in the corner. He didn't say a word. He didn't take off his shoes. He didn't even remove his jacket. He just stepped into the shower, fully clothed. The water, hot now, steamed around us, plastering his expensive suit to his body in seconds. He walked through the spray, knelt in front of me, and pulled me into his arms. He hauled me up, pressing my face against his chest, his arms locking around me like a steel cage. He held me as I sobbed, his hand stroking my wet hair, his own body trembling. "I'm sorry," he rasped, his voice thick. "I'm so sorry, Lena." I clung to him, my fingers gripping the lapels of his soaked suit jacket. "Don't leave me," I cried into his chest. "Don't send me away. But I hate this. I hate it. I hate what you are." He tilted my face up. Water streamed down his strong jaw, dripped from his eyelashes. His dark eyes were full of a pain that mirrored my own. "I know," he said. He kissed me. It was desperate. It was raw. It tasted of salt and water and blood and a hopeless, all-consuming love. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but of survival. He kissed me like he was anchoring himself, like I was the only thing keeping him from being swept away by the darkness he inhabited. I kissed him back, holding him with all my strength. He pulled his head back, resting his forehead against mine, our breath mingling in the steam. "I'm not leaving," he whispered, his voice a raw vow. "I will never send you away again, even if you hate who I am. I'm not letting you go." The townhouse was a fortress, but it was also a target. After the shower, after we had clung to each other under the scalding water, he had dressed me in his clothes again, soft sweatpants, a thick black hoodie. He dressed himself in fresh clothes, his face a grim mask. "It's not safe here," he said, his voice quiet. "I should have moved you immediately. I was arrogant." We didn't wait, and he took me to the garage, a concrete bunker beneath the house. He put me in the passenger seat of a black SUV that looked like it could drive through a brick wall. He got in, and the garage door rolled up, revealing Sal and Angelo in another identical vehicle, waiting to follow. We drove for 2 hours, north, leaving the grime of Haverdale behind. We left the highways for winding country roads, the trees growing thicker, the houses farther apart. The tension in the car was a thick, vibrating wire. I kept flinching at every car that passed, my heart pounding. Nico just drove, his hands gripping the wheel, his knuckles white. Finally, he turned down a long, hidden gravel driveway, the trees forming a canopy overhead. The woods opened up, and my breath caught. It was a lake, a vast, dark sheet of water, shimmering in the late afternoon sun, ringed by pine and birch trees, and on a small bluff overlooking the water, there was a house. It wasn't a fortress like the townhouse. It was made of dark wood and glass, with a wide porch. It looked peaceful. "Where are we?" I whispered. "My father built this place," Nico said, his voice softening for the first time in hours. "It's off the grid. No one knows it exists but me and Marco." He parked, and we got out. Sal and Angelo pulled up, their car disappearing into a detached garage. They wouldn't be staying in the house. They would be ghosts, perimeter guards. The air was different here. It was clean, sharp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. Nico unlocked the heavy wooden door, and we stepped inside. It was warm, the polar opposite of his city home. There was a massive stone fireplace, comfortable, worn leather sofas, and a wall of windows looking out at the water. It was a home, not a showroom. For a moment, we just stood in the entryway. The silence was real here, broken only by the distant cry of a bird. He'd promised me he wouldn't send me away, and he hadn't. He had brought me with him. For 3 days, we played at being normal. It was a strange, fragile, beautiful game. There were no suits, no guards in the house, no talk of Barletta or Falzone. Nico wore jeans and old Henley shirts that strained across his chest. I wore his sweaters and thick wool socks. We cooked together. The first night, I found a kitchen stocked with food. I started pulling out vegetables, and he just watched me, a foreign expression on his face. "What?" I asked, holding a bell pepper. "No one's ever cooked in here, besides me," he said, as if the concept was new. He was clumsy in the kitchen, a man used to giving orders, not mincing garlic, but he did it. I guided his large, scarred hands, my fingers brushing his, and a simple, domestic intimacy bloomed between us that was more profound than the desperate passion in the city. We ate at a small wooden table, the lake turning to ink outside the windows. He taught me how to light a fire in the massive hearth, his body pressed against my back as he showed me how to stack the kindling, his breath warm on my neck. On the third day, the sun came out, bright and warm for late October. The lake was a sheet of deep, cold blue. "Have you ever been in?" I asked, standing on the wooden dock, my arms wrapped in his sweater. "Not in years," he said, standing beside me. I turned to him, a reckless, giddy feeling bubbling in my chest. "Race you!" Before he could process the words, I kicked off my shoes, pulled the heavy sweater over my head, and ran. I was in his t-shirt and a pair of shorts I'd found. I hit the end of the dock and jumped, my body arcing into the air before I plunged into the water. It was shocking, so cold it stole my breath, 1,000 needles of ice pricking my skin. I surfaced, gasping, and wiped the water from my eyes. Nico was standing on the dock, staring at me. He had a look on his face I'd never seen before. Not desire, not anger, not command. It was wonder. Then I laughed. It was a real laugh, bubbling up from my chest. It felt rusty, unused, a bright, clear sound in the autumn air. "It's freezing," I shouted, treading water. "You're a coward, Romano." His lips quirked. It wasn't a smile, not quite, but it was close. He pulled his shirt over his head, revealing the expanse of his chest, the scars, the ink. He was magnificent. He took a running start and dove cleanly into the water, surfacing a few feet from me. His hair was slicked back, water dripping from his jaw. "You're insane," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You're slow," I shot back, and I splashed him. His eyes widened in shock. I had splashed the Mafia boss, then he splashed me back, a wave of icy water that made me shriek. We were just two people in a lake, the world reduced to cold water and bright sun. He swam to me, his powerful strokes closing the distance in seconds. He grabbed my waist, pulling me against his warm, hard body under the cold water. "Insane," he whispered again, his mouth close to mine. "Happy," I whispered back. He just watched me, his dark eyes tracing my features as if he were trying to memorize me, to etch this moment into his mind. He leaned in, his kiss no longer desperate or raw, but tasting of cold water and a hesitant, fragile peace. That night, we lay in the massive bed upstairs, the fireplace in the corner crackling, casting flickering orange light across the room. I was warm, curled against his side, my head on his chest. I could feel the steady, slow beat of his heart beneath my ear. I traced the dark ink that spread across his left pectoral, the lines of a crest and a name, written in elegant, old-world script. "What does it mean?" I asked softly. "The tattoo." His hand, which had been stroking my hair, stilled. He was quiet for a long time. I thought he wouldn't answer. "It's my mother's name," he said, his voice rough. "Isabella." I lifted my head to look at him. His face was shadowed, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. "She died when I was 16, long before—" He trailed off. "Before what?" "Before any of this. Before I became this." He looked at me, his eyes full of a darkness that had nothing to do with the room. She never saw who I became. She remembered a boy who went to church. She would be proud of the man, I whispered, my fingers tracing the letters of her name. "You're a good man. Nico, you have a code." He gave a harsh, bitter laugh. "I am a killer, Lena. Don't make me into something I'm not. You saved me." "And how many have I damned?" he countered, his voice flat. I rose up on one elbow, looking down at him. The firelight played over the scars on his ribs, the hard planes of his face. I saw the conflict in him, the war between the man his mother knew and the man his father had raised. "You are not a monster," I said, my voice firm. "You're just a man, and you've been alone for a very long time." I leaned down and kissed him. It was slow, gentle. It wasn't the desperate clinging in the shower or the claiming in his bedroom. This was different. This was my choice. I kissed his jaw, his throat, the scarred skin over his ribs. I felt his breath hitch, his hands come up to grip my arms. "Lena," he breathed, a warning. "It's okay," I whispered against his skin. "I'm not scared of you." I moved over him, my hair tenting around us, my body covering his. This time, I was in control. I wanted to show him that I wasn't his prisoner, not his obligation, not his victim, that I was here with him by my own choice. I wanted to give him comfort, not just take it. I took my time, learning the hard lines of his body, the way his muscles contracted under my touch. I was showing him with my body what I couldn't say in words, that I trusted him. I trusted him with my fear, with my bruises, and with my heart. And when he finally moved, rolling us over so he was above me, his movements were different. He was slow, reverent. He held my gaze, his dark eyes searching mine in the firelight. It was a joining, a quiet vow, a gentle claiming that healed more than it broke. It was a perfect, fragile peace. But peace, I was learning, was just the quiet between gunshots. It happened the next morning. We were in the kitchen, coffee brewing. I was wearing his hoodie, the hoodie I had worn from the townhouse, the hoodie I had worn when Troy's men had grabbed me. We were laughing about his inability to crack an egg without shattering the shell when the first bullet hit. It was a deafening crack, and the window over the sink exploded, spraying glass and ceramic shards across the kitchen. Nico moved so fast I barely registered it. He grabbed me by the waist, throwing me to the floor behind the thick granite island. "Stay down, don't move." Another shot, crack. This one slammed into the wall where I had been standing. Drywall exploding. A sniper. "They found us!" I gasped, my blood turning to ice. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. How did they find us? Nico was on his belly, crawling toward the pantry, where I knew he kept a phone. "I don't know, but they're here." He was calm. He was back. The commander, the killer. He pulled me with him, keeping his body between me and the windows. "Sal, Angelo, report. What's your status?" he yelled into the phone, his voice a low growl. The line was silent for a second, and then Sal's voice came through, strained. "Boss, they're here. At least 6 of them. Maybe more. They came from the woods. Took out our perimeter sensors. Angelo." "Boss." "Angelo's hit. He's down." Nico's face went blank, utterly, terrifyingly blank. He closed his eyes for 1 second. "Where is the shooter?" Nico asked, his voice lethally calm. "High, in the trees. North Ridge, maybe 300 yards out," Sal panted. "They're pinning us down. They're advancing on the house." Nico looked at me. "We're leaving. Now, back door. Crawl. Go." He pushed me, and I crawled, my knees scraping on the hardwood floor. We moved through the living room, staying low, the sound of more gunshots popping in the distance. We reached the back door, a solid oak slab. "They'll be watching this door, Nico," I whispered, trembling. "I know." He peered through the small peephole. "Sal, I'm drawing his fire. When I move, you break for the woods. Get to the secondary vehicle. I want suppression fire on that North Ridge. Now." Before I could argue, he grabbed my face. He kissed me, hard and fast. "Do exactly as I say. We run for the trees. Don't look back. Don't stop. No matter what. Do you understand?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He took a deep breath. "Now." He kicked the door open and shoved me through it. We burst out onto the back porch. A bullet splintered the wood by my head instantly. Ping. "Run, Lena," he roared. We sprinted. We ran across the open lawn that separated the house from the tree line. It felt like a mile. The air was alive with the sound of gunfire. A shot from Sal's position. A deeper thump, 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 answered the sniper. I scrambled into the woods, pine needles and dirt flying. I tripped, my hands sinking into the cold earth. Nico grabbed me, hauling me up. We plunged deeper into the forest, thorns and branches tearing at my clothes, at my skin. We ran until my lungs were on fire, until my legs were jelly. Finally, when the sounds of the battle were distant, Nico pulled me behind a massive granite boulder. He was breathing hard, but he was already back on the phone with Marco. "They found the lake house," he said, his voice pure ice. "Angelo's gone. Sal's holding. I want an all-out assault in Falzone's supply line. I want every truck he has, every warehouse he owns, every shipment he's expecting. You burn it. You burn it all. This is not a message. Marco, this is erasure. This ends now." He listened. "I don't care about the commission. I don't care. He came into my home. He put his hands on her. He killed my man. This ends. Do it." He hung up, slamming his hand against the rock. "How?" he seethed. "How did they find us?" I was leaning against the rock, gasping for air, my mind racing. "A tracker," I whispered. He looked at me. "What?" "A tracker. It has to be." My eyes widened in dawning horror. I looked down at the black hoodie I was wearing. My coat, back at the townhouse. When they grabbed me, they must have... No, wait, not the coat. The hoodie. This hoodie. I was wearing it when they grabbed me. They must have put a tracker on me then. I tore the hoodie off, throwing it on the ground as if it were on fire. I was standing in the cold woods in just a t-shirt. Nico didn't hesitate. He stripped off his own jacket and wrapped it around me, his hands firm on my shoulders. He looked at the hoodie on the ground, his face a mask of cold, calculating fury. He used you as bait. He let you go, knowing I would come, knowing I would take you. He wanted me to take you somewhere safe, somewhere he could corner me. He wanted us both. The sheer, cold-blooded cunning of it made me sick. "What do we do now?" I asked. We were alone, in the woods, hunted. "We survive," he said, "and then we end him." He pulled out his phone again, his thumb hovering over the screen. "Wait," I said. He paused. "You want to end him, right? Not just hit his trucks. You want to end him." "I want him in the ground," Nico growled. "Then you need more than street force," I said, my mind suddenly, terrifyingly clear. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my belly, but something else was growing alongside it, anger, a cold, hard rage that matched his. "You can't just kill him, Nico. They'll just replace him. You said it, the Barletta Syndicate. You need to cut the head off, and you need to burn the roots." He was staring at me, his head tilted. The boss was gone. The man was looking at me, really looking at me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I can help," I said, my voice shaking but gaining strength. "When I was with the loan sharks before Troy, I was in their offices. They were stupid. They were arrogant. They left paperwork out, ledgers, shipping manifests. They talked, they bragged about their connection to Barletta, about Riccardo Falzone. I remember things. Nico, names, dates. I remember hearing them talk about a shipment, a big one, something that wasn't drugs, something clean, something they were moving through the port." The confusion on his face was replaced by a dawning, sharp intensity. "What did you hear?" "I heard them say Falzone was using a legitimate import business as a front to move, I don't know, weapons? Something. And they said the only person who knew how to untangle the legal side was his own sister." "Sophia," Nico breathed. My head snapped up. "You know her?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. "She's not his sister. Lena, she's mine." He saw the shock on my face. "My sister, Sophia Romano, she's a defense attorney, the clean one. She hates my world, but she's helped me clean up my messes before, reluctantly." A plan, insane and terrifying, was forming in my mind. Then we use both, your way and her way. Nico stared at me, and I saw the shift. I saw the moment he stopped seeing the terrified girl from the bathroom stall, the victim he had to protect. He was seeing a survivor, an asset, a partner. "Street force and legal leaks," he said, the words a quiet revelation. "Exactly," I said. "You hit his supply lines, make him panic, you bleed him, and while he's distracted, I talk to your sister. I give her what I know. She's a lawyer. She'll know what to do with it. We hit him from the shadows, and we hit him from the courthouse." He grabbed my face, his hands hard on my cheeks. "You are brilliant," he whispered, his eyes blazing, "and you are terrifying." He made the call. An hour later, a black car met us at a deserted crossroads. Sal was in the passenger seat, his arm in a crude sling, his face pale but set. Angelo was gone. The weight of it settled on Nico, a visible, heavy burden. He drove us back to the city, not to the townhouse, but to a sterile, high-end apartment in a glass tower that he must have kept for emergencies. The next day, she came. Sophia Romano. She was tall, rail-thin, with Nico's dark eyes and a mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. She wore a gray pinstripe suit that screamed, "Expensive lawyer." She walked in, her heels clicking, and didn't even look at me. She just stared at her brother. "A war? Nico? Really? Over this?" She gestured to me, as if I were a stray dog he'd brought in. "Sophia," Nico warned, his voice low. "Don't Sophia me," she snapped. "I told you, after the last time, I told you I was done. I will not launder your life anymore. I will not risk my entire career, my license, to pull your soldiers out of jail." "She's not a soldier," Nico said, his voice quiet. "She's the key. She has information. On Falzone. Enough to put him away. The right way." Sophia's eyes finally turned to me. They were sharp, assessing. She scanned me from head to toe. "Is that true? You have actual, admissible evidence? Or just pillow talk?" I bristled. "I have names, dates, and account numbers I memorized from ledgers I saw in the South Haven office. I know about his import front. I know he's moving something big. And I know you're the only one who can use that information to burn him to the ground without your brother having to fire another bullet." Sophia's eyebrows shot up. She looked from me to Nico, and a small, dangerous smile touched her lips. "Well, she's got bite, doesn't she?" She turned back to me. "All right, I'm in. On one condition. You want Falzone gone? You want this to end? You testify. In open court. Everything you know. No hiding. No anonymous witness. You stand up and you point your finger." I looked at Nico. His face was granite. He was already shaking his head. "No," Nico said. "Absolutely not. She testifies. She's painting a target on her back for the rest of her life. We do this my way, quietly." "No," I said, my voice ringing out, surprising all of us. Both of them looked at me. I stood up, my legs shaking. "She's right. I'll do it. I'll testify." "Lena, no," Nico said, grabbing my arm. I pulled away. "You don't get to decide, Nico. Not this. Not anymore." The tension in the room was suffocating. It was Nico's world of violence versus Sophia's world of law, and I was standing in the middle. I wanted out. I wanted to be clean. I wanted to live a life where I didn't have to check for snipers. "Nico, this is the only way," Sophia said, her voice softening. "You cut the head off with the law. The body dies. You do it with a bullet, and 2 more heads grow in its place. You know that." "I can't protect her in a courtroom," he exploded. "I don't want to be protected," I finally screamed, the words tearing out of me. The last few days, the fear, the kidnapping, the gunfire, the brief, beautiful peace. All of it boiled over. Tears streamed down my face. Hot and angry, I turned to him, my fists clenched. "Don't you get it? I love what we had at that lake. I love the man who taught me how to make a fire. But I can't live like this. I won't. You made me feel safe, but I don't want to feel protected anymore." I jabbed a finger at his chest, my whole body trembling. "I want to feel free." The silence in the room was a ringing, metallic thing. My words, "I want to feel free. hung in the air between the three of us. Nico's face was pale, his eyes dark with a pain so deep it stole my breath. He looked at me, not as a boss, not as a lover, but as a man who had just been dealt a mortal blow. He had offered me his entire world, his protection, and I had just thrown it back in his face. Sophia, ever the pragmatist, broke the silence. She snapped her leather briefcase shut. It settled. Then, Lena, you'll come with me. We'll put you in a corporate apartment, prepaid. We start depositions tomorrow. No, Nico said. His voice was flat, dead. It's not your choice, brother, Sophia said, her voice unusually gentle. It's hers. And she's right. This is the only way to end it. Nico didn't look at his sister. He just looked at me. He was searching for something, a sign of doubt, a reason to override me, to lock me away as he'd originally planned. I held his gaze, my chin high. Even as tears streamed down my cheeks, I was terrified, but I was more terrified of the life he was offering, a life in a gilded cage, waiting for the next gunshot. Lena, he pleaded, his voice a low rasp. Don't do this. You don't know these animals. You don't know what they're capable of. I know what you're capable of, Nico, I whispered, and I know what I am. I'm not that girl in the bathroom stall anymore. You did that. You made me strong. Don't be angry that I'm finally using it. He didn't say another word. He just turned, a violent, sharp pivot, and strode out of the apartment. The slam of the door echoed like a shot. Sophia let out a long breath. Well, that was dramatic. Come on, let's go before he changes his mind and puts us both in a concrete box. She took me from the glass tower. As we walked out onto the busy city street, I saw him. He was across the road, parked in his black SUV, watching. He was just a silhouette behind the tinted glass, but I could feel his gaze, a physical weight of anger and despair. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched. I got into Sophia's sleek, sensible sedan. As we pulled into traffic, I looked back. His car remained, an unmoving shadow, a guardian I was abandoning. My fists were clenched so tight on my knees that my nails bit into my palms. The next 3 days were a blur. Sophia was a machine. She put me in a sterile, anonymous corporate apartment downtown, the kind with beige furniture and bland art. It was guarded, but by private security, not by men with guns under their suit jackets. She prepped me. We sat for hours at a glass dining table, a recorder between us, as I dredged up every single memory from my time in the South Haven office, every overheard phone call, every name, every number on every ledger I'd glanced at. Troy Del Vecchio, I said, my voice flat. He reported to a man named Stax. Stax handled the collections, but the money, the real money, went to an import company, FG Imports, Falzone, Ricardo Falzone. Sophia's pen flew across her legal pad. That's it, she whispered, her eyes gleaming. That's the front. We have a target. It wasn't easy. The fear was a constant companion. Sophia had given me a burner phone, the only number programmed in it hers. The first time it rang with an unknown number, my heart stopped. I answered, "Hello." "You think you're safe, little girl?" A voice rasped, a voice I didn't know, but it was layered with the same menace as Troy's. "You think a lady lawyer can protect you? We know where you are. We know what you're doing. Testify, and we'll send your pretty head back to Romano in a box." I dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor. I backed away, my hands over my mouth, my whole body shaking. When Sophia found me, I was huddled in the corner. She didn't coddle me. She picked up the phone, listened to the dead air, and tossed it on the table. "They're scared," she said, her voice sharp. "That's good. That means what you have is real. They're bluffing. Lena, they can't get to you here." That sounded real, I whimpered. "They all sound real." She crouched in front of me, her sharp eyes softening. "This is the hard part. This is the part where you decide if free is worth the fight. Nico fights with bullets. We fight with this, with courage. Can you do this?" I looked into her eyes. So much like her brother's. I nodded, a jerky, uncertain movement. I can do this. The threats kept coming. A new phone, a new number, the same voices. We'll find your mother, we'll start with her. But with every call, a strange, cold resolve settled in me. The fear didn't go away, but it turned into fuel. It hardened into a diamond-sharp rage. On the fourth day, all hell broke loose. I was trying to memorize a page of notes when Sophia burst into the apartment, her face ashen. She didn't knock. "What is it?" I asked, standing up. "He retaliated," she said, her voice trembling. "Falzone, he burned the old warehouse, the one on 5th Street. I frowned. "One of Nico's properties?" "My father's property," she said, her voice cracking. "It was the first building he ever bought. Nico just kept it for sentimental value. Falzone knew. He knew it would be a message. He burned it to the ground." She sank into a chair, her professional mask crumbling. "And that's not all. He put a price on my head. A hit. He's not just trying to scare you anymore. Lena, he's trying to silence all of us." Before I could even process what that meant, a hit on Sophia, the apartment door flew open. And this time, it wasn't a knock. Nico was there. It wasn't the man I'd left. It was the boss. His face was a mask of such cold, lethal fury that I took a step back. Sal and 2 other men I'd never seen, flanked him. They were armed, their jackets open, their purpose clear. "You," he snarled at his sister. "You're done. Your way failed." "Nico, no," Sophia protested, standing up. "This is what they do. They're lashing out." "They put a price on your head," he roared, the sound echoing in the small, beige room. "They burned our father's building. You want to fight with paper? I'm going to fight with fire." He turned to me. His eyes were black, all traces of the man from the lake gone. "You're done. Get your things. You're coming with me." "No, Nico," I yelled, backing away. "This is what I chose. You can't just—" He crossed the room in 2 strides. He didn't hit me. He didn't grab me. He just loomed over me, the power rolling off him in waves. "I watched you leave. I let you try it your way. And in 4 days, you're a target. My sister's a target, and my father's memory is in ashes. Your way is over. You are coming with me, and you are going to stay where I tell you to stay until I have put Riccardo Falzone in the ground. This is not a discussion." "You can't do this," I screamed, tears of rage and frustration welling. "You can't keep locking me up." "I can," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "I can, and I will, because I am the only one who can keep you alive, and you're the only thing I have left to lose." He grabbed my arm. "Sal, take my sister. Take her to the tower, full security. She doesn't leave her apartment until I say so." "Nico, you're making a mistake," Sophia shouted, as Sal gently but firmly escorted her out. Nico all but dragged me from the room. "You are selfish," I hissed at him in the elevator, my voice shaking with fury. "This isn't about protecting me. This is about control. You can't stand that I chose a different path." He didn't answer. He pushed me into the back of his SUV. The ride was silent, a suffocating, angry quiet. He took me back to the glass tower, to the emergency apartment. He locked the door. I rounded on him. "You're a tyrant, Nico. You're no better than he is." "I am nothing like him," he roared, finally breaking. He slammed his fist against the wall, a crack spidering in the plaster. "He wants to kill you. I want to keep you breathing. Why is that so hard for you to understand?" "Because your breathing room is a cage," I shrieked. "I can't live like this. I can't be this person, this prize, this property that you all fight over." I don't know when the anger turned to sobs. The last few days, the threats, the fear, the sudden, violent escalation, the man I loved turning into a monster in front of me. It all came crashing down. My legs gave out. I just collapsed. I sank to the floor, my hands covering my face, and I wept. I wept from a place so deep and so broken. I didn't think I'd ever stop. The rage left him instantly. The anger in the room evaporated, replaced by the sound of my broken sobs. I felt him kneel in front of me. "Lena," he whispered. his voice thick. Just leave me alone. I cried into my hands. I can't. I'm so tired. I'm so scared. I know, he said. I know. Come here. He didn't ask again. His arms slid around me, pulling me from the floor, from my heap of despair. He pulled me onto his lap, right there on the floor. I was still fighting him, my fists weakly beating against his chest, but he just held on. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling my head against his shoulder, his hand stroking my hair. "Shh," he murmured, his lips against my temple. "It's okay. I've got you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I just clung to him. I wrapped my arms around his neck and held on, my sobs quieting into exhausted, shuddering breaths. We stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other on the floor. The war was outside, in here. There was just us. "You can't win like this, Nico," I whispered, my voice muffled by his shirt. "I can't lose you," he whispered back. "We do this together," I said, pulling back to look at him. His eyes were wrecked, full of fear and a terrible, violent resolve. "Okay, your way, my way. We do it together." He searched my face, then nodded. "Together." The next day, Sophia, now under Nico's guard, made a call. A meeting was set, not in a courthouse, but in a safe house. This time, we weren't just prepping, we were activating. We sat at a table with 2 federal agents. They were stone-faced, all business. Sophia did the talking. "My client," she said, nodding to me, "is prepared to offer a full, first-hand witness account of the inner workings of the South Haven Street crew and its direct financial ties to Riccardo Falzoni's import-export business." "What does she have?" one agent asked. And I told them. I gave them the ledgers I had memorized, the names, the dates, the secret bank accounts, the whispers of the clean shipment. I gave them everything. I talked for 3 straight hours. When I was done, the agents looked at each other. One of them finally smiled. "Miss Carter," he said, "you just built our entire case. With this, we can get warrants for every wiretap we need." "You get the warrants," Sophia said, leaning in. "But Falzone is spooked. He's not going to make a mistake on a wire. You need a confession." The agent frowned. "And how do you suggest we get that?" Nico, who had been standing in the corner of the room, silent as a statue, finally spoke. "You don't," he said, stepping into the light. The agents tensed. "I do." Nico prepared for war. While the feds scrambled to get their warrants, Nico gathered his men. The glass apartment became a war room. Marco, Sal, and a dozen other men I didn't know cycled through. Maps were unrolled, photos were passed around, Falzone's convoy routes, his security detail, his habits. I watched, my heart in my throat. This was his world, blood and strategy. The night before the assault, the apartment was quiet. It was just us. The feds were in place. Nico's men were in place. Tomorrow, it would all come to a head. He found me on the balcony, staring at the city lights. I was wearing his jacket, the one from the lake house. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. He didn't say anything, he just held me. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "The feds, they can get him." "They'll get him on paper," he murmured into my hair. "I need to get him on blood, for Angelo, for my father, for you. He needs to know it was me who ended him, before they put him in a cell." He turned me in his arms. His face was hard, but his eyes were soft, full of a terrible, aching sadness. "Lena, if I don't—" "Don't," I said, my fingers on his lips. "You will." "If I don't come back," he said, his voice firm, overriding me. He took my left hand. He pulled a ring from his own finger. It was a simple, heavy gold signet ring, etched with the crest I'd seen on his chest. It was warm from his skin. He slid it onto my ring finger. It was huge, heavy. "If I don't come back," he repeated, "you'll still be mine. They'll know you're mine. No one will ever touch you again. This will protect you." Tears streamed down my face. "Nico." He kissed me. He kissed me with a lifetime of pent-up love, fear, and regret. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of goodbye. I love you. Lena Carter, he whispered against my mouth. I think I've loved you since you screamed in that bathroom stall. I love you, Nico Romano, I sobbed. Come back to me. Please. He held my face in his hands. I will always come back to you. He kissed me one last time, hard, and then he was gone. I spent the night with Sophia in the federal safe house. It was a van, parked 2 blocks from the highway, filled with listening equipment. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and tension. Sophia was all business, but her knee was bouncing. Her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. Where are they? I whispered. It was just before dawn. The sky was a bruised purple. A cold, steady rain had begun to fall. They're in place, Sophia said, checking her watch. Falzone's convoy left his compound 10 minutes ago. Right on schedule. She handed me an earpiece. This is a live feed from the wire the feds planted on one of Falzone's men, and from the one Nico is wearing. My blood ran cold. He's wearing a wire? My idea, she said, her voice tight. The feds agreed. A confession in his own words. It's the only way to make the charges stick. To get the whole syndicate. But Nico, he's doing this his way. I put the earpiece in. I heard nothing. Just static. And the steady thump-thump of the rainy highway. They're moving. An agent in the front of the van said, and then the world exploded. Through the earpiece, I heard a sound so loud it made me cry out. An explosion, then another, shouting, metal screaming. They're hit, the agent yelled. What's happening? I clawed at Sophia's arm. Nico's men, she breathed. They're boxing the convoy in. The earpiece was chaos, gunfire, a rapid, terrifying pop, pop, pop that was deafening. Men were screaming, in English, in Italian. Go, go, get the boss, a voice yelled. Then I heard Nico's voice, clear as a bell, but strained. Ricardo, nowhere to run. More gunfire. I heard a grunt, a sharp intake of breath. Nico. He's hit, I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Sophia, he's hit. He's fine, she said, her voice shaking. He's fine. Listen. I heard a scuffle, a man panting, terrified. Falzone. You, Falzone spat, his voice trembling. Romano, you're dead. You're all dead. No. Nico's voice was low, ragged, full of pain and triumph. You thought you could take from me? You thought you could burn my father's house? Put a price on her head. The girl? This is for that piece of trash. Falzone laughed, a hysterical sound. She was nothing. She was everything, Nico snarled. And you killed my man, Angelo. You're going to say his name. Go to hell. I heard a sickening thud, a scream. Say his name, Nico roared. Angelo, Falzone shrieked. Angelo, I'm sorry, it was just business. And this, Nico panted, is personal. Nico, no, I screamed at the earpiece. The feds are on you, Falzone stammered. I know it, you kill me, you go down with me. Who said anything about killing? Nico's voice was cold. You're going to confess. To Angelo, to the warehouse, to the hit on my sister, to the shipment at the port. You are going to tell me everything, and this wire, it's going to hear it all. And he did. For 5 minutes, Ricardo Falzone, his voice broken and sobbing, confessed to everything. He sang, trying to save his own life, not knowing he was burying himself. I was sobbing, my head in my hands, as I listened to the downfall of an empire, bought by the man I loved, in blood and pain. Move in, the agent in the van shouted. I heard sirens then, loud, closing in. Nico Romano, Falzone whimpered. You bastard. Nico's voice was the last thing I heard, tired but victorious. Tell my father I said hello. Then, static. The line went dead. We got him, the agent said, clapping his hands. We got him, full confession, it's over. Falzone was arrested. The news channels lit up. The South Haven crew, their leadership shattered, their supply lines burned, just dissolved The charges stuck. It was over. But Nico was gone. The feds had him. Then they didn't. He'd been treated at the scene for a bullet graze to his side, and then he vanished. Sal and his other men had melted away before the main federal force arrived. "Where is he?" I asked Sophia, my voice hoarse. We were back at the tower. "He's underground," what she said, her face pale. "He can't be seen. Lena, not now. The commission, Falzone's allies. They'll be looking for him and the feds. They got what they wanted, but they know who did it. He's a ghost. For his safety. And for yours." Days passed. 1 day turned into 3. 3 into a week. He didn't call. He didn't send a message. Just silence. The price on my head was gone. The threat was over. I was free, just like I'd wanted. My mother's hospital bills were suddenly, miraculously, paid in full, an anonymous donation. I was heartbroken. He had kept his promise. He'd set me free, but he'd vanished from my life to do it. I couldn't stay in the city. It felt wrong. I told Sophia where I was going. She gave me a key. I went back to the lake house. Sal had fixed the windows. The house was clean, quiet. It was just as we'd left it. I walked in, wearing his heavy jacket, the one from the woods. His signet ring was heavy on my finger. I walked out onto the dock. The water was still, a dark mirror reflecting the gray. Empty sky. I pulled his jacket tighter, the scent of him, faint and fading. Rising from the collar, I stared out at the water, a free woman, completely and utterly alone. Days passed, then a week. The world, which had been silent and submerged, roared back to life. My testimony was scheduled. The media, which had been circling the story of Falzone's dramatic highway arrest, now had a new focus. The mystery woman who had brought him down, me. I walked up the courthouse steps with Sophia at my side. The flashbulbs were a blinding, popping wall of light. Cameras whirred. Reporters shouted my name, a name I barely recognized anymore. I kept my head high, my eyes fixed on the limestone carving above the oak doors. I was wearing a simple, dark blue dress Sophia had bought me. Underneath it, on my finger, hidden, was Nico's ring. It was a silent, heavy weight. The courtroom was a cavern of dark wood and stifling silence. I saw Falzone. He was sitting at the defendant's table, flanked by lawyers. He looked smaller, his arrogance replaced by a sallow, pinched expression. He saw me, and his eyes burned with a hatred so pure it was almost a physical force. I looked away, my gaze sliding to the jury. 12 faces, all staring at me, all waiting. I took the stand. I swore the oath. I sat down. My hands, resting on my lap, were perfectly still. I was free. I was terrified. And I was completely, utterly hollow. Falzone's lawyer was a shark. He was slick, expensive, and he moved in for the kill immediately. "Miss Carter, is it?" he began, his voice a smooth, condescending purr. "Tell me, when did you begin your arrangement with Nico Romano?" "Objection," Sophia said, her voice sharp. "Assumes facts not in evidence." "Sustained. Rephrase, counselor," the judge ordered. "My apologies. Miss Carter, you were deeply in debt to the South Haven Street crew. Were you not?" "I had a loan, yes," I said, my voice clear and steady. It didn't even tremble. "A loan you couldn't pay. And then, like a knight in shining armor, Mr. Romano appears, eliminates your debt, and takes you into his home. Is that correct?" "He saved my life from Troy Del Vecchio, who was one of your client's men." "He saved you," the lawyer repeated, smiling at the jury, "and in return he gave you shelter, clothes, food, and you. You gave him your loyalty. Would you say that's accurate?" "I gave him what I knew about your client's criminal enterprise. Yes." "Oh, I'm sure you did," the lawyer sneered. "Tell me, Miss Carter, were you sleeping with Nico Romano when he took you in? Were you his guest, or were you something else?" I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I held his gaze. I was a woman he saved from being beaten and sold by your client. What I am is a witness to the names, the dates, and the accounts I saw in the South Haven office, to the ledgers that tied Troy Del Vecchio directly to Riccardo Falzoni, to the shipping manifests for F.G. Imports. I turned to the jury. He's asking you if I'm a mistress. He wants you to think I'm a compromised, kept woman. I am a woman who was drowning, and Mr. Romano saved me. And when I was safe, I told him, and then the federal government, every single thing I knew about the men who tried to kill me. My voice rang out, clear and true. The lawyer's smile faltered. He tried to paint me as a liar, as a pawn, as a scorned lover. But the facts were the facts. The ledgers were real. The wiretap, the one Nico had risked his life to get, was undeniable. My testimony just hammered the nails in the coffin. When I stepped down, hours later, I felt nothing. No triumph, no relief, just empty. It was over. I was free. I returned to the lake house. I couldn't be in the city. Sophia had driven me, her eyes full of a new, grudging respect. You did well, Lena, really well. Thank you, Sophia, for everything. He'd be proud of you. You know, she said quietly as I got out of the car. I just nodded, unable to speak. I watched her drive away, and then I was alone. I was alone with the silent lake, the whispering pines, and the ghost of him. His jacket was my constant companion. His ring was a permanent, cold fixture on my hand. I walked the dock. I sat by the fireplace. I slept in the bed where we had been normal for 72 perfect, impossible hours. Days passed. The media attention faded. The world moved on. I just waited. I was living in a pause, a breath held too long. He had vanished. He had kept his promise to set me free, and in doing so, he had torn my world apart. The silence was a physical ache. 2 weeks after the testimony, a car crunched on the gravel drive. My heart leaped, a painful, stupid bird in my chest. It was Sophia. I met her on the porch, my hands twisting in the sleeves of his jacket. The verdict is in, she said, not bothering with hellos. And? Guilty. All counts. Racketeering, conspiracy, solicitation of murder. With your testimony and that wiretap, he'll be gone for a minimum of 30 years. Falzone is finished. It's over. Lena, for good. I should have felt something. Relief, joy, justice. I felt nothing but the emptiness. Good, I whispered. That's good. Sophia watched me, her sharp face softened by a concern that looked foreign on her. You haven't heard from him, she stated. It wasn't a question. I shook my head, my eyes burning. He's really gone. Lena, she stepped closer, putting her hand on my arm. Her touch was awkward but kind. I came for another reason. I got a message from Marco. My head snapped up. He's alive, she said quickly, and the breath I hadn't realized I was holding shuddered out of me. He's alive. Lena, he's okay. The graze. It's healing. Where is he? I demanded, my voice raw. Why hasn't he called? Why did he just leave me here? Sophia's eyes were full of a sad, familiar frustration. Because he's an idiot. Because he's my brother. He's hiding. Lena, not just from Falzone's remnants, he's hiding from the law. The feds turned a blind eye to what he did on that highway because he delivered Falzone. But they've made it clear. He's a liability now. He can't operate the way he used to. He's a ghost. She took a breath, and he's hiding from you. From me? The words were a punch to the gut. He meant what he said. He wants you to be free, truly free. He knows that as long as you're tied to him, you're in his world. You're a target. You're his... He thinks this is the only way to save you, to let you go, to give you the free life you asked for. I stepped back, the betrayal a cold, bitter acid in my throat. He didn't just abandon me. He chose to... He had made my choice for me. And that's not his decision to make, I whispered, the rage building, cold and slow. I know, Sophia said softly, but he thinks he's being noble. He thinks he's protecting you." "He's a coward," I spat. "No," Sophia said. "He's just in love, and it's made him stupid. Give him time." She left, and the emptiness I'd been feeling was replaced by a towering, silent rage. He didn't get to do this. He didn't get to break me, rebuild me, and then discard me for my own good. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was a prison of memories. I built a fire, the flames crackling, mocking the cold stillness in my chest. I stared into the embers, his ring heavy on my finger, his jacket wrapped around me. I would leave tomorrow, I decided. I would go back to the city. I didn't know. I would do something. I would not wait for a ghost. A floorboard creaked on the porch. I went rigid. My heart didn't leap, it just stopped. I'd heard that sound before, the soft, heavy tread of a man who didn't want to be heard. I thought of snipers. I thought of Falzone's men. But the fear was gone. There was no one left to hunt me. There was a shadow at the glass door, a tall silhouette, standing in the moonlight. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. The door slid open. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and him. He stood there, just inside the room. It was Nico. He looked broken. He was thin, the sharp angles of his face more pronounced, shadowed by a thick, untamed beard. His hair was too long. He was in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, and he was limping. The bullet graze on his side, the one he'd taken in the firefight, was clearly more than a graze. His face was a map of exhaustion, and a fresh, purple bruise stained his jaw. He just looked at me. His eyes, those dark, intense eyes, were wrecked. They were full of a desperate, painful hunger. "Lena," he breathed. I didn't run to him. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my hands clenching into fists, the rage and the grief and the love all swirling into a hurricane in my chest. "You're alive," I said, my voice flat, dead. He took a limping step toward me. "I heard the verdict. I heard you were safe." "Safe," I repeated. "And you? Where have you been? Hiding, being noble, setting me free." The bitterness in my own voice surprised me. It was sharp, cruel. He winced, as if I'd struck him. "Lena, I had to. You wanted to be free. I am the cage." "You are a coward," I whispered. "I know," he said, his voice cracking. And that broke me. The rage shattered, and the grief just poured out. "You don't get to do this," I sobbed, the words tearing from my throat. "You don't get to decide for me. You don't get to vanish." I walked toward him, my steps unsteady. I was alone. You left me alone. After everything. I was in front of him now, close enough to feel the cold radiating from his clothes. I looked at his bruised face, his haunted eyes. "You don't get to leave me," I cried. And I hit him. My fist connected with his chest, a solid, painful thud. I hit him again and again, my palms, my fists, striking his solid chest. "You don't get to vanish." He just stood there, and he let me hit him, his arms at his sides, his face a mask of agony. He took every ounce of my pain, my rage, my grief. I finally collapsed against him, my forehead pressed to his chest, my sobs uncontrollable. My fists still weakly clenched against his shirt. "You left me." I wept. I thought I was so alone. His arms came around me. They wrapped around me, pulling me so tight I could barely breathe. He buried his face in my hair, his body trembling. "I'm sorry," he rasped, his voice thick with an emotion I'd never heard from him. "I'm so sorry, Lena. I didn't want to drag you down. I tried. God, Lena, I tried to stay away." He held my face in his hands, his rough palms scraping my tear-stained cheeks. "But I couldn't. I lasted 2 weeks. It was like not breathing. I can't stay away." I looked at him, at this magnificent, broken man. "Then don't," I whispered. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate claim in his bedroom. It wasn't the raw survival in the shower. It wasn't the gentle peace at the lake. It was a reunion. It was a starving man finding food. It was a drowning man finding air. It was all his loneliness, all his fear, all his love poured into one. His beard was rough against my skin, his lips firm and demanding, and I answered him with all the pain and love I had. I clung to him, my fingers tangled in his hair, my body pressing against his, needing to feel every inch of him, to prove he was real. He broke the kiss, resting his forehead against mine. We were both breathing hard, both shaking. "I'm not part of your world anymore, Nico," I whispered, my eyes closed. "I'm not that girl. I won't be protected." "I know," he breathed. I pulled back, just enough to look him in the eye. "You're not protecting me anymore. We protect each other. Do you understand? You and me, that's the deal. Or you walk out that door, and you never come back." A slow smile, the first real smile I had ever seen from him, touched his lips. It transformed his face. "We protect each other," he repeated, like a vow. "I like that." He swept me into his arms, his one good arm and his injured side straining, and he carried me to the bedroom. He didn't turn on the light. The fire from the living room cast a warm, flickering glow over everything. He laid me on the bed, his movements slow, deliberate. There was no desperation now, only a deep, quiet intimacy. He undressed me, his hands gentle, his eyes tracing every line of my body in the dim light. I undressed him, my fingers tracing the jagged, puckered scar on his side from the bullet. It was still healing. I kissed it, a soft, reverent press of my lips. He shuddered, his hand tangling in my hair. "Lena," he breathed, his voice raw. This time, there were no secrets. There was no fear. There was no boss, no victim. There was just Nico and just Lena. We lay facing each other, our bodies pressed together, our legs tangled. He just held me. He looked at me, his eyes memorizing my face, and I looked back, seeing the man, all of him, the killer and the savior, the monster and the lover. When we finally came together, it was a quiet, unfolding thing. It was slow and deep and filled with all the unspoken promises we couldn't make in the daylight. It was the healing of two wounds. It was the merging of two souls who had been forged in the same fire. It was equal. It was whole. And as I drifted to sleep, locked in his arms, his heart beating steadily against my back, I finally, truly, felt safe. 1 month later, Riccardo Falzoni was sentenced to life in prison, the Barletta Syndicate, with its head cut off and its operations exposed, crumbled. I stood in the small, cluttered office of the Haverdale Women's Legal Clinic. I'd started volunteering, my name now a quiet symbol of survival in the city. I was helping a young woman, her eyes wide with fear, a baby on her hip. She was telling me about a payday loan, about a man who wouldn't stop calling. "You have rights," I told her, my voice low and firm. "They can't threaten you. They can't hurt you. We're going to fix this." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "How? You don't understand." "I do," I said, giving her a small smile. "Believe me, I understand better than anyone." I had my own apartment now, a small, bright place above a bakery. My life was my own. It was clean. It was quiet. But he was still a ghost. Nico was still underground. The commission hadn't forgiven his war. The feds hadn't forgotten his methods. He was a shadow, moving in a world I no longer saw. But he was my shadow. I'd come home late from the clinic, the smell of baking bread clinging to the air. I'd lock my door, make my tea, and get ready for bed. And some nights, I'd turn, and he would be there, leaning in the doorway of my bedroom, a small smile on his face. He never used the door. He used the fire escape. "You're late," he'd whisper. "I had a case," I'd whisper back. He would slip into bed beside me, his body all warm skin and hard muscle, and he would hold me. We wouldn't talk about his world. We wouldn't talk about mine. We would just be, And in the morning, long before the sun came up, he would be gone. A ghost kiss on my forehead, the scent of him on my pillow. One evening, 6 weeks after the trial, I found myself on that old, familiar street. The dive bar was still there, its neon sign flickering. I don't know why I went. To close the circle, maybe. I walked inside. The smell was the same. Sour beer, desperation. I walked to the back, to the bathrooms. I pushed open the women's room door. It was just as grimy, just as cold. I walked to the last stall. The lock was still broken. The frame splintered where he had kicked it open. I stepped inside, my back pressing against the graffiti-covered metal. I stood where I had hidden a lifetime ago, and I saw it. Scratched into the paint, low, near the floor, was a note. It was fresh. No girl should ever have to hide again. I smiled, a real, slow, genuine smile. He was out there. He was still the boss. He was still a killer, but he was our kind of protector now. We were protecting each other. I traced the N with my finger. Then I turned, and I pushed open the stall door. I slipped on his jacket, the one I still carried everywhere. I walked out of the bathroom, out of the bar, and into the cool night air. I was no longer running. I was moving forward. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We truly hope you enjoyed it. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Please let us know in the comments below. And if you love this story, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for more tales of danger and passion. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on Lena and Nico's journey, so please share them in English.